Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of Let's Talk Books, where I get to chat about books, I guess. Hello everyone, I am Helen as always, and for this episode, it's because it's the beginning of the year, it's January and all of that kind of thing. I've got a few different things to talk about. So I'm going to start with a kind of 2024 wrap up and a little look at my stats from 2024. We'll then do a December wrap up with the books that I read in December. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about my reading goals for 2025, and then we will do my January TBR. So kind of 4 little sections, which I suspect might make this video a little bit longer than usual, but I will make sure that underneath the video in the description box, I put timestamps for each of the sections, so you can pop in and out as you see fit, I guess. Or you can skip to the bits that you want, or you can just... yeah, whatever. However you prefer to watch, I will give timestamps to make it easier for you. So, let's talk books, shall we? Let's start with my 2024 stats. So, 2024 for me was probably the first year that I tracked my reading in a significant way. I've kind of dipped in and out of Goodreads in the past and tracking my reading that way. I've kind of made notes on what I've been reading, but it's always been a little bit sporadic. But 2024 was the first year that I really set up a reading journal, which is this one here, where I made kind of notes of all of the books that I was planning to read and all of the books that I finished each month. I gave them ratings. I looked at the number of pages I've been reading and things like that. So this was the first year that I've really done that, and I stuck to it for the whole year and I have loved it. I have already set up what I'm doing for January, for this year. And I'm keeping it very similar, to be honest. I am sticking with a page for a TBR and then a page for what I've read, and I'm putting in my star ratings and everything like that. So the way I'm tracking isn't really changing. But 2024 was the year that I started that, which means it's the first year that I've got stats to share, which makes me very happy. So I read, in total, in 2024, I read 79 books, which equaled I can't do numbers today, apparently. 29,451 pages that I read in total, giving me an average about 373 pages per month, which feels like, no. Yeah, did that work out per month? Or is that per book? No, that was per book. That's what confused me. I didn't work out per month. 373 pages per book. That was what I wanted. So it was kind of giving me an idea as to whether I read lots of little books or lots of big books. But the average gave me, I think, a pretty standard kind of paperback-sized book. So yeah, 79 books. I'm really, really happy with that. I think in previous years I have read more than that, but I've also not been as busy in previous years. So, you know, there's those kind of, you know, life gets busy in places, doesn't it? And this was a really busy year. So I think to have read 79 books, I'm really, really happy with that. My biggest reading month was May, which was quite interesting. I read 10 books in May. I was trying to think whether anything special happened in May, whether I did anything in May. It wasn't a particularly big work month. There were no big events on. I wasn't doing any shows or anything like that, but we didn't go on holiday or anything like that either. So yeah, I have absolutely no idea why May was the biggest month, but it was. My longest book was Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, which is 906 pages long. And my shortest book was one I read in December, and that was Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien, which was 111 pages long. I really liked looking at like longest book, shortest book. Because I think that gives you a really interesting kind of cross-section of the different books. So yeah, that's that. I then looked at genre stats, and I haven't gone through all the genres. I've just kind of picked out the genres that I found interesting. I think in addition to the 6 that I mentioned, I think I also had a little bit of mystery and a little bit of, there's a children's one in there as well, and things like that. But in total, for the ones I've picked, I read out of those 79 books, 27 of them were fantasy, which doesn't surprise me. Fantasy was my biggest genre this year. That was closely followed, though, by crime and thriller with 20 books. I listen to quite a lot of thrillers on audiobook because I find them quite easy to listen to while I'm working and things like that. So I think that really boosted that number. Then we had romance coming in at 12, which surprised me, actually. Not that I'd read 12 romance books, but that it was the third highest of the genres. But yeah, I have got into a fair bit of romance this year. Then we followed that with 8 horror books, which doesn't surprise me, 6 historical fiction books, and only 1 sci-fi book, which really surprised me because I do love a bit of sci-fi. So that is something I want to do something about this year. I can't believe I only read 1 sci-fi book, and that was Nofek Gloss. I can't remember the name of the author, but I really enjoyed that at the beginning of the year, and it is a series, so hopefully I will just carry on with that series and get some more sci-fi in this year. I also looked at reading formats. So of those 79 books, 35 of them, so just less than half of those books, were audiobooks. As I said, I listen to audiobooks quite a lot when I'm working. I also listen to them when I'm driving and things like that. And I'll also sometimes stick them on when I'm doing boring jobs around the house, like sorting out the laundry and emptying the dishwasher, just to kind of keep me motivated so that I can get through those boring jobs. But yeah, 35 of them were audiobooks. 22 of them were Kindle books. This was the year that I very much not moved away from my Kindle, but prior to 2024, and I would say probably at least kind of a third of the way into this year, I was primarily a Kindle reader. And then this is the year where I've really kind of picked up more physical books, mostly because when I moved into the studio, we gained a whole new room in our house, and we now have bookshelves and space for physical books, which we didn't have before. So yeah, 22 out of those 79 were Kindle books. And then I also read 16 paperbacks and 6 hardbacks. I think these will be the stats that will be really interesting to see whether that changes this year. I want to try and read a lot more from my physical books at home that I haven't read. So yeah, I'm hoping to see a reduction in the Kindle books and an increase in the kind of physical paperback and hardback books. Although, having said that, I have nothing against reading on my Kindle. I enjoy reading on my Kindle. I just want to read physical books that I already own a lot more. So that is all our stats for 2024. Do you track your reading stats? If you did, how do you compare? How many books did you manage to read this year? And yeah, what stats, what do you track? What do you find interesting to kind of keep a note of as you go throughout the year? Maybe you'll give me ideas for something new to track for 2025. We will move on now to, I just need to turn a page in my notebook, my December wrap up. Now, who watched the last video and was like, oh, don't do that. That's a really, really bad idea. You really, really don't want to just stick to Christmas books in December and you don't want to do it. You're not going to enjoy it. You got it right, if that was true. I had a terrible reading month in December. Now, part of that, I will say, was because I was recording Vlogmas, which meant that a lot of my normal reading time ended up being editing time. So I didn't have as much kind of downtime where I would sit and read. And I think that's part of it. So I kind of, yeah, I struggled to find the time to read as much as I normally would. But I also had 3 DNFs. So I DNF'd, I haven't written them down, which was stupid. I DNF'd The Night Before Christmas by Alex Pine. I was listening to that on audiobook, and I don't even know how to describe it. Have you listened to My Dad Wrote a Porno? It's a podcast where I can't remember who does it or anything like that, but it's a podcast where this guy finds out that his dad has written smut, basically, and he reads the smut out on the podcast, and it is hilarious. It is such a great podcast. If you haven't listened to it before and you don't mind a little bit of graphic descriptions of certain acts and things like that, It is hilarious. But if you have listened to it, there is something about the way that The Night Before Christmas was written that just reminded me of that story, of the Belinda Blinks story from the podcast. I don't know, it was just the writing style, and it was just over descriptive. Like, there'd be moments where he was like, oh, we got back to the police station and we were all a bit hungry, so we went and got a sandwich. And I was like, do I need all this description? There was a moment where it described the fact that when he got back to the station, he needed a wee, so he went to the toilet and he breathed a sigh of relief as he released himself. And I'm like, really? Do I need this? So yeah, that one got quite quickly DNF'd. I then also DNF'd Love Like Farms by... Oh, that's not good. I can't remember who it was by, and I don't have it written down anywhere. Or do I have it written down in here for the previous time I did the book thing? Bear with me. No, I don't have it written down in here. Yeah, I also DNF'd Love Like Farms. I'll put it on the screen. Well, you'll see because I'll put the book on the screen, won't I? I just didn't care. There wasn't anything bad about it. It wasn't terrible. I was reading it as a Kindle book, I think. And I just didn't care enough about it, to be honest. So I kind of gave up on it. And then the final book that I DNF'd was, what was it called? I've not got it with me again, and my brain has gone. The Christmas Killer? I'll put it on the screen. Was this one here. This is kind of a soft DNF. Like, there was nothing wrong with this book. I was quite enjoying it. It was fine. But then when we got to my in-laws' house over Christmas, I just wanted something on my Kindle. I was reading this one as a paperback, and I just wanted something on my Kindle so that I could read at the same time as I was knitting, which I can't do with a paperback book, obviously. And I just got caught up in what I was reading on my Kindle. And this ended up kind of slipping by the wayside, and then it wasn't Christmas anymore, and I didn't really fancy picking it back up again. So yeah, nothing wrong with it. I was kind of enjoying it. I suspect it will have been a 3-star kind of rated at the end, but I just got caught up by other things. So let's talk about what I did finish in December, shall we, rather than all the books I didn't finish. So I did read 5 books in December in total. So that was a total of 1,230 pages, which worked out as an average of 246 pages per book. So a little bit smaller on this side, but as I said, one of the books, Letters from Father Christmas, was my shortest book of the year. So it's unsurprising that that number was dropped slightly down. My average star rating for the month turned out to be 3.9 stars, which is a little bit on the low side, I think. But I read Make You Mine This Christmas by Lizzie Huxley-Jones. So with this one, we follow Haf, who goes to a Christmas party and has a very bad drunken kiss with a man called Christopher. There's then a big misunderstanding with his ex-girlfriend who thinks they are a couple and, who thinks they're a couple and ends up telling his family that he's got a new girlfriend and everything like this, and his family want him to invite his new girlfriend home for Christmas. Haf, as it happens, doesn't have anything to do over Christmas. Her parents are away. She's kind of left a little bit in limbo, so she thinks, why not? I'll go and it'll be great. So she decides to go to Christopher's for Christmas and pretend to be his girlfriend. Things I really liked. So first off, I love that Haf is a plus-size character, and it's very well described, I thought. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. And it was also really quite fun that Haf very much comes from a working class background and Christopher doesn't. Christopher's family are very rich. They have a massive house in the countryside, and she is a little bit out of place. I knew within the first kind of few pages of this book that I was going to enjoy it a lot more than Love Like Farms. I really loved Haf as a character, and I really enjoyed that. So anyway, she goes to Christopher's for Christmas, and then she goes to fake boyfriend, pretending to be his boyfriend, but she falls for his sister. And then that is kind of your plot, and your twist is them like working out what they're doing and all of this kind of thing. I very much enjoyed this. I gave it a 4-star. which for a romance is pretty high for me. And yeah, I enjoyed it. There is a sequel, I've forgotten the name of it, which is Christopher's Story. So at some point I will read that. Maybe not now, because I need a bit of a break from Christmas stuff. Yeah, this was very fun, a very fun romance. I then listened to Craven Manor by Darcy Coates. Now, I've really enjoyed some of the Darcy Coates I've listened to recently. I've listened to The Haunting of Blackwood House, The Haunting of Ashburn Manor, and another one, I think, as well. This one didn't quite hit it for me in the same way. You follow Daniel, who is living on his cousin's sofa, basically, and he's desperately looking for a new job. And he receives a note under the door inviting him to become the groundskeeper for Craven Manor. And at first, he doesn't quite believe this is a real thing, but he figures he'll go and check it out anyway. And he gets to Craven Manor, and it appears like everything has been set up for him. He's got a cottage in the grounds. Everything he could need is supplied for him. Food is supplied for him. He's paid in gold coins. He just has to deal with the grounds, basically, clear out the garden, make sure there's access to the crypt, and all of this kind of stuff. So he takes the job, but then he gets given a strange set of rules. So he is not allowed out of the cottage after midnight, I believe, and before sunrise. He must shut his curtains and all kinds of stuff. There's a certain part of the manor house that he's not allowed in. And yeah, he starts hearing sounds, strange things start to happen, and we go from there. And it was all right. It was all right. I gave it 3 stars. It was all right. I don't know. I just think it didn't live up, for me, it didn't live up to some of the other ones in the same way. So I don't quite know. I think part of it annoyed me. So his cousin is a nightmare, is a really horrible person. And he just seemed to have this whole blind spot for his cousin. And, you know, I was just screaming at him as if to say, just why are you letting this guy ruin your life? Why are you trusting him with anything? He is a horrible person. But yeah, it was all right. That's my review. It was all right. Yeah, 3 stars. Yeah. So that was that one. I then listened to Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Seanan Maguire. This is not the last. So this is number 9, I think, in the Wayward Children series. I've loved the Wayward Children series. I think number 10 is just about to come out, so I'll have to keep an eye out as to whether it pops up on Everand. The audiobooks for these are brilliant, and I've listened to them all on audiobook. They're really, really short. They're quite small books, usually all under 300 pages. So really nice and quick audiobooks. This one follows Antsy, who we also followed in the previous book, but she has found her way to the school for wayward children, but the others at the school have started to discover that her ability is to find anything, which means that she can find other people's doors. So if you haven't watched before and haven't heard me talk about it before, the School for Wayward Children, the Wayward Children series is a portal fantasy with the idea that children sometimes fall through doors to other worlds, and then they end up back in their home world trying desperately to find a way home as such. And they're always looking for their door back to the world that they had visited. And she can find those doors, but that puts her at dangers. So her and some other familiar faces from the school are forced to flee once this kind of power has been revealed, I guess. We follow that. And this one also features dinosaurs, which is super fun. So I gave this 4 stars. Again, really good, solid, really enjoyed the story. And I am definitely continuing with the series as soon as I can. I've really, really enjoyed it. As I said, I've listened to them all on audiobook, but I'm so tempted to buy a set of all the books because they're really cute and the cover art is lovely and I can see myself rereading them. So yeah, that was that one. Now, the next book, I'm just thinking, did I have any of those physically? No, but I have the next book physically. So the next book is a little bit of a change to the books that I generally put on my my wrap-ups and stuff like that, because they're books I haven't been tracking. But the next book I finished is a kid's book. So I finished The Christmasaurus Carol by Tom Fletcher, which we read to the boys during December. And I read a lot of books to my boys. This year particularly, we have finally got to a point where my boys are 8 and 11. So we have finally got to a point where they are reading the same book for bedtime, which means that we are able to kind of all sit down together as a family and read their bedtime story. I'm generally the one that reads it out loud. So I figured, why am I not tracking these as books finished? Because I read this whole book. I read this whole book out loud to the children. I think there was maybe only one chapter that I didn't read, and I was there for it anyway. So yeah, going forward, I am going to be tracking the books that I'm reading to the kids. So I wanted to talk about it because we loved this. We've read all of the other Christmasaurus books. This is book number 4 in the Christmasaurus series by Tom Fletcher. If you don't know who Tom Fletcher is, Tom Fletcher is a musician from the band Busted, I believe. I'm getting it confused. Was he Busted or McFly? I feel like he was Busted. Does it tell us in this about him? It must tell us about him. Was he? No, he was McFly. I got it wrong. So he was a songwriter and performer in McFly, and he now writes children's books. And I have read so many of them. He's got a really good range of like picture books for kids, but I also really love the Christmasaurus books. They're so much fun. So we follow William, who is his dad absolutely loves Christmas. He has grown up with Christmas being a massive thing in his household, and through various events in the first few books he meets Father Christmas, and Father Christmas has a dinosaur called the Christmasaurus who pulls the sleigh. And William becomes best friends with this dinosaur, and every new book is some kind of new adventure that features them all. And in the Christmasaurus Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge accidentally gets released from a copy of A Christmas Carol and starts to ruin Christmas. All the decorations get taken down and everything goes wrong, and ends up with the Prime Minister cancelling Christmas, and William and his family and Santa and the Christmasaurus have to find a way to save the day. So much fun. I love the inclusion in this. William is in a wheelchair and it's always dealt with really, really well. And there's always they always find ways that he can be included in everything, even though he has mobility difficulties and stuff like that. I love to see inclusion in children's books. It's one of those things that I just think is so good, because not only do children who have whatever is being included in terms of disabilities and stuff like that, not only are they getting to see themselves in literature, which is so important, but other children are getting to see it, and it normalises it as well for other children. So yeah, that's one of the things I love. A solid 4 stars for this one for a children's book, and we will see through the year what other books I read to the kids. And then the final book that I read in December was Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien. I loved this. I listened to it as an audiobook, which I would highly recommend because it has little bits of music in there in between the stories and everything. But basically, the idea about this is that J.R.R. Tolkien, for about 20 years, he wrote back to his children. When his children wrote to Father Christmas, he wrote letters back. He told stories, he had characters. There's the North Polar Bear, there's an elf that begins to write later on, and it's just lovely, the stories that develop. And things I found really interesting was, when he first started writing, his kids were obviously quite young, and things like The Hobbit hadn't been written by that point. But you get to a point where you can start to see where he was starting to write about The Hobbit, as he started including goblins and things like that into his stories. He also wrote through World War II. And And it was really interesting to see how he wrote to his children, like talking about some of the events and the challenges and the things that they were going through during World War II, the food shortages and stuff around the world, and like how that was impacting Father Christmas. And I thought he did a really, really good job of that kind of stuff. But it was just, overall, it was just heartwarming and lovely and the perfect festive read. And I absolutely think I will listen to it again next December because it was so, so lovely. Yeah, I kind of wish I'd done that to my children. But yeah, brilliant. 4.5 stars I gave it. Absolutely loved it. Would highly recommend it if you're looking for something during December in 12 months' time. Right, let's move on to my reading goals for 2025. Now, normally I would just set a number of books as a reading goal and that would be it. But I am going a little bit beyond that this year. So I have set myself a goal of 80 books, which, having read 79 last year, feels very achievable. But I didn't want to put too much pressure on myself. So I'm just sticking with 80 books as my reading goal. But the other thing that I am doing this year is I am joining in with Win of Literary Diversion's bingo board from hell. So every year they create this bingo board. I'll put mine up here. And you pick 9 kind of goals for yourself throughout the year to try and stick to. And it is absolutely hilarious watching them on their channel as they go through the year and do or don't meet some of these goals. It's so much fun. So this year I thought I would join in and I would create my own bingo board. If you are a fan of my knitting podcast, you may see where I got the idea for my crafting bingo. So this is my bingo board for the year, for my reading goal. So we've got on there 80 books. I thought I might as well just put my general reading goal on there because that's a board, that's a square sorted. I want to read 6 of my book club books. So over on my Patreon channel, we have a bi-monthly book club and every 2 months we pick 2 books. We don't have to read both of them, but it gives people choice basically. And I've said 6 books from the book club. So basically I want to try and read 1 book from every book club that we do throughout the year. There have been a couple of months where I've just not had time to get to the book club pick, and I really want to prioritise that and make that happen this year. I want to read 5 sci-fi books. As I just said, I only read 1 sci-fi book last year and that really surprised me. So I definitely want to increase the number of sci-fi books that I read this year. I've then got read 25 physical TBR books. So this is, I want to read 25 books from my bookshelf, basically. Because as I was saying, I want to kind of prioritise those physical books that I have on my bookshelf rather than reading on my Kindle as much. So yeah, 25 books from my bookshelf. All 4 Evernight books. So I have got a subscription with Evernight, which is a branch of Illumicrate. And the Evernight subscription is a quarterly subscription. So you get 1 special edition, in this case with Evernight, it's horror, 1 special edition horror book every quarter. So I get 4 a year. I've only had 1 so far, which was the October one. January is the next one, so I will get 1 in January at some point, and I want to try and make sure that I read all 4 of them this year. I want to kind of keep up with that subscription. Otherwise, for me, it doesn't feel worth having it if I'm just getting the books and they're just sitting on my bookshelf forever. So that is on there. I want to read 10 books from ongoing series. I have quite a few series on the go, and I have a habit of reading like the first or second book of the series and then just kind of forgetting about it for a while. So I really want to try and prioritise reading ongoing series. So yeah, 10 books from ongoing series. I've then got 10 books. I want to read 10 books to the kids. I was trying to work out a number for this. And because I haven't really tracked what books we've read to the kids this year, and it was only kind of, I'd say halfway through this year that we got to a point where we started reading to the kids together rather than them both having separate stories. But I feel like we get through probably 1 book a month. So 10 books seems achievable, hopefully. We will see how it goes. But yeah, that's on there. I've then got, I want to read 50% of my Worldcon purchases. So I went a bit mad at Worldcon. I was vending at Worldcon in August, and there was, as I said, I'm sure I've talked about this before, there was a massive literary presence. And because I was earning, I spent a fair amount of money, and I came back from Worldcon with 17 books. I have read one of them so far, which is not great. So of those 16 remaining books, I want to make sure that I read at least 50% of them this year. So that means I need to read 8 of my Worldcon purchase books. And then finally, I wanted a square. I was struggling with the last square on the board, I have to say. Absolutely struggling with it. And then I was chatting to a few friends and trying to work out. And in the end, I decided I wanted something fun here. Something that randomized things a little bit and, you know, maybe gave me a little bit of a challenge every so often. So I decided that I would do 6 TBR card picks. So I've talked about them before. I have a set of TBR cards which have little prompts on them to help you pick a book from your bookshelf. And yeah, I'm going to use 6 books that are randomly picked by my TBR cards as well on this board. So there we go. They are my reading goals for this year. We will see how I get on. I am happy to like double dip. So for example, if I read the Evernight books will be physical TBR books, so they will work together. I might potentially end up with a sci-fi horror. That would also work together. Like, that is fine. Obviously, everything counts towards my 80 books. And yeah, if the TBR card picks a book that fits in with various other bits, then there will be kind of double dipping and overlap, and that is fine. That is absolutely fine. Okay, final section. Final bit. So the final thing is to have a look at my January TBR. Now, I don't feel like I've gone too mad with my January TBR to start with. I wanted to prioritise library books because I had got 2 library books sitting on the shelf that I have renewed a number of times and I needed to get to. So the first one is The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. I was really excited to see this at the library because I have wanted to read this for absolutely ages. And I am currently reading this at the moment. I don't know, how far in am I? I am 135 pages in. My bookmark is just not quite sticking out of my book properly. Bookmark is just there. And I am absolutely loving it so far. So we follow Gaia, I think that's how you pronounce it. We follow Gaia, who is a caver, and she is on an expedition into these caves. And she's on her own in these caves. There are potential threats. She has contact with a woman who can control her suit, basically. So she's supposed to be there to kind of help her and guide her and, you know, support her in emergencies. But there's been a couple of occasions where she's taken control and she's drugged Gaia when she's not wanted to be drugged, and she's lied to her, and it's a bit kind of, we're not quite sure what's going on there. Yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. It's a psychological kind of thriller, I guess, with horror elements, but also survival down in these caves. I'm finding the description of the caves really, really good. I'm loving the caving element of it. I always find things like that really interesting, and yeah, very, very enjoyable so far. I'm trying to think, do I need to tell you more about it? I don't want to just read the back to you. But it is kind of, it's sinister in like a little bit disconcerting in that you're not quite sure what's happening. Gaia feels like she's being followed. One of the caches that they were supposed to be getting to is missing, but there shouldn't be any way that somebody else can be in these caves. But maybe there are, and like she doesn't quite know what's happening. And then her relationship with this person on the surface who is supposed to be supporting her is also a little bit odd and a little bit unsettling, and she's down there on her own for a long time. Yeah, really, really enjoying it so far. Then the second library book is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. And this is basically a Pinocchio retelling. So we follow some little robots, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, we follow 3 little robots and a human named Victor. And things kind of go wrong. So they salvage a little android who then accidentally gives away their location, and their life kind of changes because of that. But it's meant to be a Pinocchio retelling. I have read one book from TJ Klune, which I actually read. I finished at the beginning of this month, so I'll be talking about it in my January wrap up. It didn't make it onto my TBR for January because I started it in December, but I finished it in January. And I really, really enjoyed that. So I'm excited to kind of get to more. It says on the back, inspired by the adventures of Pinocchio and the Swiss Family Robinson. It's a masterful and heartfelt fantasy adventure. Here, even a family assembled from spare parts might become whole. I get the idea that it's got a lot of kind of found family in it, and robots. It sounds perfect. So that is the next one. I've then got All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is my attempt to read some more sci-fi. This is the first in the Murderbot series, which I've heard really good things about. We follow Murderbot, who is a security android who is basically in this world. The company is in charge of all of the kind of missions that go out, and they send security bots or sec units with all of the workers in order to kind of keep an eye on everybody and things like this. But Murderbot has hacked his governor module, which is what kind of the company used to keep him in check, basically. So he doesn't have to follow orders if he doesn't want to. He can basically do his own thing. But all he really wants to do is be left alone to sit and watch his TV shows. And he keeps having to do other stuff. And yeah, that's basically it. I'm listening to this one as an audiobook, and it's quite short. I don't know how many pages the actual book is, but they're quite little books. So I feel like this could be the start of a good sci-fi series, assuming I get on well with it. Then I want to get to Ship of Destiny. This is the 3rd book in the Live Ship Traders series by Robin Hobb. I should have read this one during November, December, but I just needed a bit of a break after Mad Ship. But I am going back in. This one is it even longer? No, it's not quite as long. This one is 903 pages as opposed to 906 pages. So yeah, I am going back into the world of Bingtown and the Bingtown Traders and Paragon, the live ship, and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm hoping to kind of tackle this. I don't know whether I will get this finished this month or whether it might roll over into February, but I am going back into the world. Yep. And then there's 2 more books. So the next 2 books are books that are the picks from my book club, so my Patreon book club. So the first book that got picked was Luck and Booth. I don't actually know. I've not written down who this is by. Although hilariously, I went to the charity shop this morning and I bought another book by the same person, and I still can't remember who it's by. Bear with me a second. Let me jump onto Goodreads. Come on, internet, be nice and quick for me. Why is there always a circle of loading when you're trying to get to things quickly? There we go. Jenny Fagan. So Luck and Booth by Jenny Fagan. And in this one, we are journeying through time, I guess. We are following a block of tenements through time. So the Devil's Daughter has gone to Edinburgh, and she bears a child for an important family. And then that event curses the block of the tenement flats that the family live in, and we are following the effect of that over generations of people who live in these tenement flats, I think. I think that's kind of the idea of the book. I don't know a lot about this one. It was a random pick off my TBR. I have like a big long list that I use to pick my Patreon book club picks, and this was a random pick. It's been on there for ages. And I can't even remember why it got put on there in the first place, but it sounds interesting. So yeah, that one, this is the one that I think I'm going to prioritize out of the two. So this one I'm hoping I will get to this month. And then the other book that got picked by my Patreons as well as for our book club, which I will try my best to get to, but it probably will get rolled over to next month, is The Appeal by Janice Hallett. Now, this is a, what is this? So it's kind of a murder mystery, I think. We follow a group of amateur dramatics actors, amateur dramatics players, and during the event of the play they're putting on, somebody is murdered. And then we are following two young lawyers who are sifting through all of the documents, so all of the emails and the text messages and everything that has been collected about this murder to kind of try and work out who did it. And the whole thing is told in text messages and emails and everything like that. I don't think there is any prose in here. I think it is all told in transcripts and emails and things like that, which makes it kind of really different. It's not like anything I've ever read before, but I'm interested to give it a go and to see whether that suits me, whether I get on well with it or whether I miss the kind of traditional storytelling. So we will see, but that is the final book being added to my TBR. Now, one last thing I wanted to talk about. I am going to be changing the way that I rate books for 2025. I didn't do it for my December wrap up because I figured fresh new year, new start. We'll start from January's first wrap up, if that makes sense. So the first books that I read this year. But I am going to be rating things. We talked a little bit about this in the last episode, in that I was struggling a little bit with comparing rating like a thriller or a romance book to rating something like The Women by Kristen Hanna. Like, how can you compare that? So I am going to introduce a separate rating for romance books and a separate rating for kind of thriller/crime books. And I will work out where I put things depending on kind of what I think they are in those ratings, because I feel like I don't have a physical copy of it. Make You Mine This Christmas. Like, I really, really enjoyed this and I wanted to rate it highly, but I'm not gonna give it like it. It was like a 4-star romance for me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that 4 stars compares to another 4-star book that isn't romance directly. So I feel like I often will rate books down because I don't think they can compare to other books. Does that make sense? So we are going to be introducing a heart rating for romance. We're going to be introducing a dagger rating for thrillers, and then we will stick with a star rating for other things. We may introduce another type of rating later in the year. I don't know. I feel like we should have a different rating for children's books when I'm talking about those as well. But I can't think of what that might be. Maybe we'll do a Lego brick. I don't know. We will find out what images I can find to create the little rating thing for them. But yeah, just so that you get a feel for like, this was a really good thriller. Because you can get really good thrillers, but they're not necessarily going to compare to something else. That's my thinking. Anyway, we're going to try it. We're going to see how it works. Yeah. So let me know in the comments underneath. Have you read any of the books that were on my TBR? What do you think? Do you have any recommendations based on those? Because I always love a good book recommendation. Have you set reading goals for 2025? What are they? Let me know. And if you have made it all the way to the end here, give me the champagne's clinking emoji as a Happy New Year celebration. And I will see you all again at the beginning of February for our January wrap up. Thank you for watching. Bye.